Welcome to Personal Finance 101, the podcast where we aim to educate our listeners so they can make better informed financial decisions. I'm your host, Justin Els. I'm a certified financial planner and director at TVC Wealth and Health Managers. Today we're focusing on financial planning for families. When you start a family, your needs and your priorities completely change. Today, we will focus on tips from buying your first house, starting your kids' tertiary education fund, and also planning for the future, which includes retirement planning and estate planning. Saving for your child's tertiary education is definitely high on the list of priorities when you start a family. This gives your kid the best chance of success in life. Setting up a tertiary fund and funding your child's tertiary education also helps them to transition into adulthood. But how can you do this? The best thing to do is just to start as soon as possible, even with as little as possible. This is especially important considering that tuition fees are constantly going up, and the inflation rate for education is higher than your normal inflation rate. You also have to consider over and above the tuition fees that there's going to be accommodation fees and the cost of living for your child while they are studying at university. While you might not be able to cover the full tuition fees of your child at a top university, you shouldn't be discouraged. The goal is to make a contribution to your child's future and their future success. Your savings and investment goals should align with your short, medium, and long-term goals. When you're saving for tertiary education for your child while they're a baby, it might be a long-term goal. But if you're only starting while they're in high school, the goal might be shorter. It's important to have this conversation with your children so that they are aware of what you can cover. This will impact their decision to maybe going to a college that's closer to home so that you don't have to fund accommodation and groceries. The different type of savings or investment plans for your kids include unit trust, education endowments, and tax-free savings investments. I always tell my clients, it's important not to compromise your retirement for your child's education. I understand that parents want to give the best for their children, but remember, your children can always take out a student loan to fund their education. You can't take out a loan to fund your retirement, but we will cover this more later in the episode. The next priority that you'll likely consider is buying a house. It's only natural to want to put some roots down. When buying a house, it's important to consider things like your credit score. In our previous episode, Building Wealth for Millennials, we did cover this topic in a bit more detail. One of the biggest tips I give my clients is to put down as big of a deposit as they can. Usually, if you put down a big deposit on a house, you qualify for interest rate concession. For example, an interest rate concession of 0.5% on a 20-year bond of 1.5 million can save you up to 120,000 Rand in total and 6,000 Rand per year on the monthly installment. When applying for a home loan, consider your affordability. It is good practice to limit your home loan to a third of your net income. Also remember that interest rate fluctuates, and your monthly repayment can fluctuate based on the prime lending rate. So it's important to keep a bit of breathing space. When looking for property to buy, consider factors like the area you want to live in. Is it close to schools for your children or future children? And is it close to your work? The area you want to live in is going to have a big impact on the purchase price of the property. Once you've identified a property, it's important to have a property inspection. Make sure that there aren't previous damage that can cause unplanned expenses, and have a conversation with a realtor to determine the history of the property so that you are well aware of all factors that can lead to additional capital inputs or additional monthly expenses. When buying a property, there are a lot of hidden costs as well as recurring costs. Once-off costs can include the deposit, the deed registration, the conveyancing fees, just to name a few. There are also levies and special levies for sectional title properties, which form part of recurring costs. Additional recurring costs include water and electricity, unexpected repairs, and ongoing maintenance of the property. When it comes to the offer to purchase, don't just sign anything. Read the small fine print and make sure you have a good financial advisor that can assist you with this process. Once you've bought the property, it's important to take out short-term insurance. This will cover the physical building as well as the contents inside your house. It's also important to insure yourself and your partner in case your ability to earn an income is compromised. This refers to disability insurance, where you can protect your income in the event of temporary or permanent disability. Life cover is also important to consider in the event of death of yourself or your spouse to cover the outstanding bond. There's nothing like having children that makes you think differently about the future. A retirement annuity is a great way to boost your retirement savings so that you can maintain your standard of living in retirement. This will also ensure independence in retirement so that you don't have to rely on your kids to take care of you. The last point I want to focus on is estate planning. Building wealth throughout your life so that your children benefit isn't a straightforward process. A lot of people don't realize how important estate planning is. It is much more complex than just setting up a last will and testament. In a nutshell, planning for your estate means setting up documents and processes that should be followed in the event of your death. The estate planning process generally starts with drafting a last will and testament. It's also important to consider other laws and regulations, such as a marriage contract, which can entitle your spouse to 50% of your assets, as well as estate duty and other taxes. The two major things to take into account when it comes to estate planning is, firstly, to ensure you have enough liquid assets to pay for debt and taxes and other expenses like funeral costs. This is where good life insurance comes in. Your second priority is to manage and maximize your assets so that it benefits your beneficiaries. This is where a family trust can come in. A family trust can work well if you have an estate worth more than 3.5 million, if you have appreciating assets in your estate, or if you need asset protection planning. The family trust can protect the surviving spouse as well as the children, especially if they are not well versed in financial matters. Another benefit of a trust is that the assets are protected from creditors if the founder was solvent when he or she placed the assets in the family trust. However, it is worth noting that the administration of a trust can be a complex business. This is why it's important to partner with the right lawyers and financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining us in our latest podcast episode. We hope you learned something about financial planning for families. Don't forget to visit our website and our LinkedIn page.